So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for staying until the last session of this workshop. My name is Oshima, and it's my pleasure and honor to moderate this panel discussion. And well, I presented my research in the morning, but I'm moderate this session as Deputy Director of Tokyo College, which is affiliated with University of Tokyo. And we have three panelists, distinguished and prominent researchers from different areas. And I'd like to go over briefly how are you going to conduct the panel discussion. The theme of panel discussion is past, present, and future of microfluidics. And we have been looking back the achievement of microfluidics through all the presentation in this morning and also in the afternoon over 30 years. And we see how microfluidics have been evolved in 30 years. And the 30 years seems very long, but at the same time, I think 30 years old is the age at the crossroad. You have become wise and experienced, but at the same time, maybe you can explore a new direction and also open up a new era. So in this panel discussion, I like to focus on future rather than the past, because we always see the past and present through the presentation. And also, I like to focus on the social aspect rather than the scientific aspect, because we've been through the scientific achievement. And then, we will have three panelists, Professor Viovy, who also was invited the researcher at the Tokyo College, and President Fujii, and last but least, Professor Lechevalier. And then since Professor Viovy and Lechevalier have not presented, so they will present briefly. And after the presentation, I like to move on the discussion, panel discussion. And then if the time allows, I like to take questions from the floor. And then I wrap up the panel discussion with messages from panelists. And before we move on to the presentation, I'd like to briefly introduce the Tokyo College. Tokyo College was established in 2019, so we are 5 years old. It's still young. And the main philosophy is to look for joy and discovery and the power of knowledge. And the main theme is about the Earth and human society in 2050. We conducted we are working on 5 key themes through 5 main activities. And as far as the 5 main activities are concerned, we invite distinguished researchers. And during their stays, we will try to foster research collaboration. And meantime, we are trying to nurture our career researcher and also build international network. And we have invited about 40 distinguished researchers and intellectuals from around the world in 5 years. And invited distinguished researchers will engage in the following activities, such as like a public lecture. And then the lecture will be on a website, and also this panel discussion will be on the web and in a YouTube format. And then we have a very strong tie with Courage de France, and we have invited a couple of researchers every year. And then we are working on 5 themes as listed here. And we are relatively focused on the social study, but now we are trying to strengthen the natural science. That's why this workshop is very suitable for our future and the life and its value for the future society. And with that, I like to invite Professor Viovy to the podium. So Professor Viovy, please. Can you switch?
Okay, thank you. I will start saying that, yes, since I have not spoken yet, so I was asked to give a kind of self-introduction, and as Jörg mentioned this morning, it's a bit embarrassing to speak of oneself, and it's even more embarrassing because after all these talks about bright future we have seen in the morning, I will go back to the past in some sense. But anyway, I will try not to be too long. So you can see here my affiliations. So one of the things, originalities I have here is that, well, indeed there are many people in this room which have this walking on 2 legs, one in France and one in college, but for me it's very recent, so, and I will speak a bit thanks to a nice invitation to Tokyo University and Tokyo College. So again, I'll go to the past in the sense of trying to cover the 30 years of microfluidics and how I came to microfluidics, which is a bit unusual because I am really a soft matter person from the beginning and not at all someone from engineering, and I started indeed very close to here as a researcher at ESPCI, combining experimental and theoretical work on polymer science. And by the way, I did a little excursion in humanities, but completely aside by just personal militantism, as I would say, on gender issue, which was a bit ahead of time, but only for personal interest, not in my professional research. So I switched to biophysics during a sabbatical I did at UCLA in fantastic engineering department, and indeed I discovered, I was working on polymers, and I discovered that it was possible with the progress of microscopy and labeling and so on to see under the microscope single DNA molecules. And probably for now it's very usual. People do, you have seen the things of this morning presented on many single molecule things. But at that time, for someone who has been working years trying to make general models and using spectroscopy, being able to see one single molecule in motion was a kind of shock, and this has pushed me to switch to biophysics, also because of it was a very exploding field, and this also led us to start to making little devices for studying these molecules under the microscope. And we had no idea of what was microfluidics at that time, but I discovered that indeed I was doing microfluidics without knowing it. By the way, this was really the occasion of really fantastic collaboration. And because I got involved in these bio things, I moved to Curie Institute, where I started a group and had the possibility to start applying these things to biomedical application, and in some sense I entered fully the field of microfluidics at that time, and I never left it after. So now from this, I started from fundamental. Indeed, I did what Lideric showed, starting from very fundamental things and going to applied, more and more applied things, except that I'm much slower, so I did it over 30 years instead of doing it over a few years. But there are many ways to do things. And so my recent interest indeed also is connected to something which was discussed this morning, especially by Holger Becker, is the fact that on the one hand, microfluidics and nanofluidics now as a deep tech domain had huge successes, and like NGS and so on. But on the other hand, the hopes we had at the very beginning, and indeed it was also mentioned in Roland's talk, on the other hand, the expectation as seeing microfluidic system as the equivalent of smartphones, for instance, in computer science, and strong democratization was not so much a success. And I started trying to understand what are the reasons why we follow this deep tech track very efficiently, but what could be the reason why this more societal expansion was not going so well, and also many possible reasons, and trying to solve especially cost problems. And could we make something which is which I call deep low tech, which means that it's something which would use low cost technologies but based on deep science. And indeed I didn't know that Lideric would talk when I prepared this, but what you showed in the end, I feel it as exactly along this track. You have something which is based on deep science, and you try to push it to industry. So how could we massively democratize microfluidics? And the trick for that, I'm trying to developing, and which is now my main interest, is to try to develop textile microfluidics and use the power of textile technologies, which has... Textile is really a fascinating area now. It's a very old technology, probably from pre-history, but at the same time there is a strong technological renewal, and especially it allows to make complex composite structures down to microscale characteristic with a possibility for mass production at low cost. And so I won't go through, yes, we developed several kind of application there, and it leads me both to discover textile technology, but also some areas in which I had no experience, like soft robotics and organ on chip, and I hope that in the future we may have more interaction with Professor Oshima in making vascularized system, maybe, which could be an interesting model. Okay, on the institutional side, in a more modest way than other speakers, but this move towards trying to do practically useful things. I created 3 startups, including Fluigent, some of you know. And as I mentioned previously, I discovered the field of microfluidics in the late 90s, and my first, indeed I was very lucky. My first discover with the microfluidics community was during Microtas in Nara, which was a fantastic place to discover microfluidics. And then I had the luck then to become co-founder of CBMS, and this is where I met the Japanese community in microfluidics. And of course, Japan is very strong in technology in general and was very strong in microfluidics, so very present in microtas and in the CBMS, which is the society which was based on this. And yes, I met many Japanese proficient, many Japanese outstanding scientists, including Professor Fujii. So this had led me to this recent Japanese experience, which is also part of the reason why we could make this thing, because I had this many interaction with the Japanese professor, but no formal collaboration, and this was a frustration to me. So, and we discussed that with Professor Fujii during one of his very kind visits to Paris. And thanks, you suggest me, why don't you apply to Tokyo College? And I was honored and lucky to have this project professor position, and with a double affiliation locally, one Institute of Industrial Science, which is in close connection to LIMS, the CNRS Japan laboratory, and hired by Tokyo College. So I have put two photographs here with the people at IIS, and with Professor Fujii, and also with Professor Haneda, who was the former head of Tokyo College. So then this double affiliation pushed my experience, one at Institute of Industrial Science, where I had really, it opened my view on many areas, including, I have mentioned here only one because of time, but this, for instance, this pushed me to working with Professor Nomura on a topic I had never imagined I would have anything useful to say, which is the supercooling of microprocessors by phase change microfluidics, and we have a paper submitted on that. So I showed this image from, yes, the student working on that is really amazing, and to show this is really hard microfabrication with DRIE, several scales, and so on and so on. So very far from what I try to do in textile microfluidics, but so it's also a way to show that we can finally have things to say in very different possible areas. So maybe Humboldt-like a bit. Probably I'm also on much lower level, but on the Humboldt size, like you said this morning. Okay, and then last but not least, this was completely unexpected, but at Tokyo College I met many people from human sciences, as was said previously, and so this idea of pushing microfluidics in towards more public and so on, yes, pushed interested people there on a different way, which is the societal issues, as was just previously mentioned. So there was, beside the question I mentioned previously of the technologic aspect of democratizing microfluidics, we started talking about how to try to progress on the societal aspects and go to what we call deep interdisciplinarity. And yeah, I think that will be my last slide. So under the initiative and the very strong drive of Professor Shimazu, who is a historian indeed. We started a working group on these questions, and so for me it's really amazing, because I don't know if I will have anything useful to say, but at least I discover many new and human science concepts on which we exchange when I was there, and continue exchanging by Zoom talks and so on. And so I end up there. The fact that, of course, being in Japan and this experience was also a fantastic beyond the scientific aspect, by discovering better the incredibly kind people in Japan, an amazing culture, and also what I expected less, an amazing nature. The one on the right is taken as Jigokudani. This was a fantastic experience. Okay, thanks for your attention.
Professor Viovy, thank you very much for your...
Thank you. Sorry if I was a bit too long.
Wonderful talk, and also thank you very much for touching upon your experience through Tokyo College. We will have a panel discussion, but Professor Fujii, do you have any comments on Professor Viovy's talk, and also would you like to share some of your thoughts and expectations of the dynamic? I mean, the
yes. Well, I mean, first of all, I mean, the Tokyo College is, as Jean-Louis said, it's a kind of multidisciplinary sort of college, which is to show the outcomes or the new ideas around this, I mean, interdisciplinary or discipline-to-discipline interactions over the societal issues. So that we had, for example, during COVID, we had many discussions around the social scientists, historians, and medical scientists and engineers around the situation, the meaning of the situation, for example, and then what to do over this situation. And like this way, so, and then so during our, I mean, discussion in Paris, and then it was a good idea to invite him to come to Tokyo, and then for him to have an interaction with different areas of people. And then that is I'm really glad to hear that he made a kind of very different types of interactions and also the collaborative works. And as for the deep tech thing, so I also after listening to Dr. Bouquet's talk, so it is always like a technology. So we are trying to push the things forward, and then hopefully to be able to implement our technology in some sort of situations in the business or industrial applications. But sometimes it requires a kind of good pull in terms of the, I mean, the purposes or like societal situations that is, I mean, requiring the specific technology to realize that. So that makes, for example, in the Dr. Bouquet's example, it was like starting from the very high tech, or like a very basic science using this carbon nanotube or boron nitride tube, but at the end it's coming down to the like industrial scale cellulose membrane technology. So, but then there is a kind of the really I mean a strong purpose that we need to have a kind of good ways to get the energy in a renewable way. So then that is that makes a kind of strong pull from the technology, from the society side. So that like this way, it's as Jean-Louis said, so deep low tech could be a kind of good seed to be pulled off from the technology side, and then but this pull should be also important, so that so when we need to think about this kind of real implementation of the deep tech, and then we really need to see the kind of good match in this kind of senses, so that we can stick on to the basic science, but of course if we need to think about this implementation, then we will need to have a kind of right pull from the society. So that's what I had what I thought. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. And then I'd like to have a presentation from Sebastian. And if you don't mind, can I call you first name basis?
So good afternoon, everybody. So it's always a pleasure for me to have an opportunity to present my research in front of diverse audience. But I should confess that this time when Professor Oshima proposed me to give a talk at the occasion of this workshop of microfluidics, I was particularly stressed because my own research is very far from your daily life as a scientist. However, after the two presentations I just heard, I feel a little more relaxed. By the way, even if I'm relaxed, I will try to keep an eye on my watch, so to save time. But I feel what I will explain, you see the title related to elder care, raise some issues that are very close to what has been said about the relationship between science, technology, and society. So I propose you for 10 minutes to step back. I will not talk that much about microfluidics. I didn't know so much about it when I received the invitation from Professor Oshima. But I try to emphasize some maybe common issues and maybe some tentative solution we propose in our own research. So let me introduce myself briefly. So I'm an economist. I don't have the chance to be a physicist. I'm particularly interested into the relationship between Japan and France. And 15 years ago, I founded a foundation, Fondation France-Japon, very simple to remember, whose purpose is to develop more collaboration between Japanese researchers and French researchers, but in the field of social sciences. I'm quite impressed by what I heard today, the flows of researchers visiting Todai, the experience you just had. Many social scientists are going to Japan, many Japanese social scientists are visiting Europe, including France, but we don't have the same quality of dialogue. If I simplify, many of us are interested by Meiji restoration, while our Japanese colleagues are interested in French Revolution, and we don't collaborate so much. So the purpose of this foundation is not only to create some flows, but also to identify topics that could be of interest for both communities of researchers. Also, and this is what I will introduce, so basically I'm in the field what we call industrial and innovation economics, and I'm now leading a collective project called InnovCare that I will introduce, and whose ambition is try to promote innovations that provide useful answers to social needs. So basically, very simple, we try to reconnect technological dynamics and social dynamics. There is no reason why both dynamics should be connected, but we feel that if we want to have innovations that are really useful to the society, we need to make an effort. We started this effort in the book I mentioned, Innovation Beyond Technology, and frankly speaking, this book was very much critical to the way technological innovation is organized. And again, to simplify, we identify, I'm an economist, I love Joseph Schumpeter, but I feel, it's a collective book again, we felt that there are some limitations in our dominant model of innovation that we could call Schumpeterian model of innovation. Why? Because maybe it's a little too much optimistic. It assumes that innovation will always produce creative destruction. What will be destroyed will create something even better. Unfortunately, and this is what you mentioned in a way, in many cases, it can be also destructive creation. We create something that may be a trouble for environment or for. So we have to take this into account. So again, very far from what has been discussed today. I hope to share with you my own experience in collaboration between Japan and France, and this is what you know, but from a different perspective maybe. I want also to share experience of interdisciplinarity, and in the project in healthcare, I think we went a little far, and I will explain the scale of interdisciplinary. Finally, again, I'm a social scientist, but I also hope that my research, that what is invested by the French education system and the French research system would be a little useful for the society. So again, with my colleague, we have tried to think about the way we could increase the impact of our research on the society, for the benefits of the society, and this is what I would like to share with you. So this project, when we were selected 1 year and a half, we were so happy. So on the French side, it's 3 million euros. It's very small amount by comparison to what has been introduced before. But believe me, in the field of social sciences, we don't need so much expensive, laboratories like you. It's an amount that I didn't have the habit to manage on a daily basis. So this budget is for French researchers, and because it's a joint Japanese-French researcher, basically our Japanese colleagues have more or less the same budget. We are approximately 60 researchers, and most important, I give some representative members. Maybe you know some of them in the field of robotics, AI. We have people from ISIR, people from Toulouse, LAS, but we have sociologists, gerontologists, almost all fields of social sciences are covered. And the novelty of this project, by comparison to the previous one, Innovation Beyond Technology, in the previous one we were very critical, and I strongly believe in the role of that social sciences can play in terms of critics. I think we need a sense of critics, and I was very pleased to see what you did in terms of gender or feminist studies, of course on a non-professional scale, as you said, but we need this ability, and including for our students, to train our students to be able to criticize, not for the pleasure to criticize. This is one of the major qualities of French people, to always criticize, but just to know, to understand, to identify the limitation. This project, based on the critics, is trying to propose something more positive. We identify some problem. Let's try to propose a beginning of solution. So I'm not sure many of you are aware of this concept of Society 5.0. It was introduced by the Japanese government in 2015 in the context of what they call Basic Plan for Science and Technology. To make it simple, this is, in a sense, the Japanese equivalent to European and German Industry 4.0. How to promote digitalization that will increase not only the productivity in manufacturing companies, but also happiness in society. And in the context of Society 5.0, it's very much related to what you mentioned at Tokyo College, digitalization, but I think we feel very comfortable with this concept, and we want to extend it beyond digital technologies. I think digitalization is a very important step, but the idea is how we can contribute to the emergence of this society that will not reject technology or science, but that will incorporate some benefits through a collaboration. So if we want to contribute to society, first we need to identify what are the social issues. And I'm sorry, but I feel this is the role of social scientists, to identify social issues, to understand them, and eventually to identify what could be solutions in terms of public policies or in terms of social innovation, for example. So in this case, in the case of in-of-care project, we have focused on aging. To be clear, aging to me is not a problem. Aging is a very good news, and especially when it's connected to increasing longevity. But aging raises some problems. And one problem is that when you are 95 years old, and I hope that all of us will reach this age, but when you are 95 years old, you have a higher probability to face problem of autonomy, vulnerability, than when you are 60 years old. And so life expectancy, increasing life expectancy, does not mean that you will have increasing life expectancy without incapabilities. And if this is correct, it means our societies need to introduce long-term care system that will cover this problem in the context of increasing longevity. In this context, and I think Japan is a pioneer, several technologies have been introduced to try to cope with this problem of autonomy. It can be problem of mobility, it can be problem mental health, it can be problem of security. You know, falling is a major cause of loss of autonomy for very old people. And what is very famous in the case of Japan is robotics. I think but our research is not limited to robotics, but we cannot avoid discussing the benefits of robotics, and they are real. You see various cases. One important case to me is this one. The benefits of these technologies is not, of course, is for older adults. It's also for caregivers. When we introduce this kind of innovation, we need also to consider the quality of work and the quality of life of caregivers who are responsible for the most important part of life, our parents and so on. So we have several cases of very useful innovation, but frankly speaking, in 2024, when we try to compare what has been done in Japan during the last 30 years, I don't think that the evaluation of technology-led elder care is as high as the benefits of microfluidics. We have, and it has been identified by many authors, there are several problems, ethical problem of the way it will be really, it was conceived by super smart engineers and it's used by people who are losing their capabilities. There is always a gap. So what our hypothesis is that the several problems that I've identified and the gap between the resources dedicated to techno-led elder care and the result can be maybe improved by trial and errors at the limit. But I think there is a fundamental problem, and this problem is related to, again, our Schumpeterian model of innovation that has been very useful for some startups in some field. In the field of elder care, I'm afraid we may need a different model. And this model should be able to reconnect against social dynamics and technological dynamics. This model, we have called it care-led innovation. I'm not sure yet it can be generalized. I'm not sure yet it can be generalized to your problem of microfluidics and so on. But we are pretty confident that in the context of elder care, it helps us to specify social needs in focusing on the social dimension, and it also helps us to cover not only the material dimension of mobility, but also something which is more affective, emotional, and maybe psychological. I'm not entering into the detail. Now I move more to the methodology. It's good, to have this view how to improve the model of innovation in the case of elder care. What we did is I just introduced the organization of the project. Very classical, but there is one big change to me in the organization. I have been called several times by colleagues coming from engineering, often 1 week before the deadline of application to EU funding, and they call me, Sébastien, we need you. We discover that we have 15 work packages, but we forgot social sciences. Could you help us? We discover that it's very important for our consortium to have social sciences. Could you be the number 16 work package? And we will ask you, we have the super technology, please help us to make it acceptable. I said yes once, I did not say yes twice. I think it's not so comfortable. We call in French strapontin, I don't know the word in English, but it would be oli tatami sito. So, you know, so not so comfortable position for social sciences. So this time, I'm the boss. What I said, okay, we start with social sciences. And we will start with fundamental research on social needs, individual and social needs. These needs are diverse and they are evolving. We need fundamental research on this. Second work package, we are comparing Japan and France. Obviously, there are two different societies, and answers should be different depending on the cultural context, the social context, the institutional context. So we cover this. Then work package 4 and 5, then here comes the technology. And work package 5, we invited roboticists, AI specialists to think about the level of how they can incorporate the research of former packages in the conception of technologies, and we have a phase of experimentation. Between, you know, we have two blocks. We have the most important work packages, number 3, this is where social sciences will meet engineering. Then this is some food for the discussion. So we recognize, so there is a philosophical debate that was mentioned. Is it really, is there only one way to produce science that would serve social needs? I agree that we need fundamental research, and in what you describe in your trajectory, sometimes social needs were very far. You needed to concentrate on the scientific dynamics. But in our case, we try to promote this interdisciplinary collaboration for the benefit of the dialogue between society and technology. All good, but as you know, we have many problems. We don't have the same language, we don't have the same methodology, and when we try to do interdisciplinary research, as an economist, when I publish in a journal which is not in the top ranking of economists, it's nothing. So there is a difficulty to value this interdisciplinary research. So what we try to do in the project is to promote interdisciplinary education at the level of master and PhD, interdisciplinary research, and a form of research organization that will value organization. So I don't enter into the detail, but in our consortium, we have a system. We have two blocks, social sciences and engineering. It's mandatory for all the members to have affiliation in two blocks and eventually to meet in the work package 3. We also try to promote joint degrees, mobility of postdoc between the work package. Let's meet in December 2028. Maybe my hair will be even grayer, and but I'm very, very excited to be able at the beginning of this project to share some principle and maybe to continue a discussion to try to generalize this model to your own research. Thank you very much for your attention.
Sebastian, thank you very much for intriguing talk. And well, now I'd like to open a panel discussion, but I'm just running out of time. Well, I hope you don't mind call you Jean-Louis. I mentioned that democratize microfluidics. I think that's a great idea. But the same thing was brought by Professor Teruo, that he said that the basic research also needs to implement in a society. So how we can do that? And then Sebastian mentioned about how interdisciplinary research can be conducted through the example of the elder care in Japan and between Japan and France. And I think it's very, in order to implement technology and well, science and technology to the real society, it's very important as a researcher to understand and also identify the social needs. Well, it's easy to say, but it's very difficult. And as you mentioned, Sebastian, sometimes we, try to interact each other, but the terminology is sometimes different. So it's also very difficult to have a very good communication in a different, disciplines. But nevertheless, I think we need to overcome that kind of, issues to advance the microfluidics in a different, to open up a different chapter, I think. And I'd like to ask you, Jean-Louis, you listened to Sebastian's talk, and then how can we conduct a good interdisciplinary research?
Okay, thank you. Well, it raised. Does it work? Yeah. Yeah, indeed, your talk raises so many questions. I could, I think, use all the rest of the panel. So I'll try to shorten it. The first one is actually what you mentioned about elder care and the fact that in project people, address to social sciences and very late. This brings me very acutely to in our project I rapidly mentioned about soft robotics. Of course, in Japan, robotics is very. Japan is a leader in robotics, and there is scientific reason that Japan is very strong in technology, but I think there is also a cultural reason that I think Japan is probably one of the countries in the world, and maybe the one which has less social worries about technology. So Japan is very open to technology, and many of the problems we have of acceptance we would have in France and in Europe in general are not there in Japan. So it's a very privileged place for developing that. And the other thing, it very practical, it brings me to in this soft robotics project, because we are at Curie Institute, we focus particularly on medical application. And so we started discussing with a nurse at Curie Institute who is an amazing person. She's the head of a nursing people department at the hospital. And so what we learn discussing with them is amazing. So we present technology, and she explains as well, this will not work because just the people will not be able to wear it, for instance, and come and see. We have what we call a bibendum, which is a thing that you can carry and which restricts your motion to make you feel the same closely, to at least at best as possible to understand what are the practical problems that people encounter when they have the disability associated with, for instance, average age of 90 and so on. So I fully agree that this thing should be integrated as early as we can in the research. Maybe not at the right beginning, because I don't think that application-driven fundamental research is good, but as soon as we have something in which the science is understood, and we should immediately go to the people who have the problems to orient things early. And then, of course, there are all the problems with acceptability, language, and so on, we are trying to address at Tokyo College now.
Oh, thank you very much. I think application-driven technology can be well, good at that point, but then in the long run, I think the fundamental research is very important to deepen the technology and also to adapt and also adaptivity. And well, John Louis mentioned that Japan is open to technology, but well, in a way, we are open to technology, but somehow it's very hard to make in a commercial base somehow. And Terrell, do you have any comments on that?
Yes, well, so that's, I mean, the one reason is, as I have already told you, we are trying to push with our technology, but the technology itself is not really satisfying the need of the individuals. So that in that aspect, we will really need to think about the individual's need. So observing the individual, what the individuals want to have. And that is, in fact, this particular, I mean, sort of phenomenon is happening during the turn of the century, maybe. Like in the 20th century, it was like a kind of capital, I mean, intensified, I mean, mass-produced economy, so that if you have a kind of right technology and high level, then making things with a very high tech and with a relatively lower cost, and then people are buying that products, and then they are basically satisfied with the such kind of I mean, life, having those things. But now in the 21st century, it's everything's like the individuals, or all the users, or citizens, or people, individuals are like want their own, for example, own their mobile phone with the apps that they want to use, right? So that everything should be, I mean, custom made. I mean, like to suit the need of individuals. So that's that is my, I mean, sort of observation. And then now it's time to think about all the other social systems and the public services and so on, and cares in society, how we will be able to, I mean, adapt to the individual need. And in that aspect also, so we, as I have said, it's we will need to think about the kind of real pull from a society in terms of the application of the technology itself. So that's that is my thought.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a very important aspect, and you raise a very important issue. Sebastian, as Terrell mentioned, I think the social needs is becoming very diversified, and then there is a limit to what we can do as a researcher, and there is the gap is getting diversified and also deep and deep. How can we overcome that kind of gap? It's in a different sort of gap.
So this is a scientific problem. I would say this is also a political problem. Our societies are invited these days to recognize the diversity in terms of gender, in terms of race, but also maybe in terms of income class. We have the Paralympics in Paris. It's also a way to recognize diversity. So as scientists, we have to face this, but I think it's a broader problem. Clearly, we are living in a society which is more and more individualized, with individualized needs. And again, a part of this project is to cover this. And there is a tension. It would be, I think, impasse to think that we will be able to custom made the answer for all individual. So that's why we try in the project. We will have some experimentation at individual level. What makes it even more complicated that same individual will see its needs evolving with the age, and we are considering a population who is not always able to express the needs. When you have some very old people, you don't know exactly, and they don't know. So that's why, while we recognize the individualization, we also try, in the concept of care-led innovation, there is, emphasizes on inter-individual relations. So we are very concerned about the need of Mr. Suzuki, who is 95 years old, but we don't want to forget the needs of Ms. Tanaka, who is 45 and who is taking care of Mr. Suzuki. So I will not solve the problem, but our contribution will be more at the interindividual relation, and to take into consideration, again, the complexity of this need. If the focus is too much on Mr. Suzuki and Mr. Sato, I think we will never be able to succeed. So I think it's also, this project, it's also how to build a society where well-being is an individual notion, but it should be shared at the social level. It would be my answer. A little abstract, but let me try later in the project to make it more concrete.
Thank you very much. I think the society also has to be evolved in a way that answer the individualization. So, but that's a very, I guess, a very difficult, task that we have to follow. But well, I also like to take some questions from floor. Do you have any questions or comments? Okay.
So I think that was a very interesting comment from President Fujii about I think the individualism of maybe Western, more tailored to the individual, tailored to everything is personalized, medicine personalized, but that's a universal, there's universal needs, there's cultural and societal needs that have individualism in there. I think the healthcare is a universal one, right? So you want to tailor to everybody in a very individual fashion. But in terms of how I use other technologies, maybe people like to be similar in some societies and more different in other societies. So that's kind of a cultural mismatch. And so when you develop technology, recognizing that, I thought was it's very, very profound observation, and maybe something that as we develop our microfluidics, also some people would not want to. I think about kids also. They don't want to wear certain things that make them look different, and they try to make them with cartoons and other types of characters that make it more comfortable. So. I don't know if I have a real question, but I feel that how do you bridge between maybe big societal differences, but technology is kind of international now. There's not like a technology is Western, Eastern. It's all, everyone's developed technology. Wherever is good technology, we use it. But then addressing the societal and cultural differences doesn't match that paradigm. So that's, I think, a little bit of a question there.
Thank you very much for your comments. And Thomas, you have also comments or questions.
Maybe more reflection on a few of the other comments that was said here, that democratizing microfluidics, I think we have already see the first wave of that when we went into soft lithography, and all of a sudden PDMS appeared as an opportunity to these super fancy clean room facilities. There were only a few labs in the world that could do it, and all of a sudden, I mean, thousands of labs in the world could start to do that, and that really impacted how why we are sitting here today, I would say. That changed. It was a game change. And we now see other ways of doing that with the textile approaches. We have 3D printing technology that's coming down in price. Everybody can design really, really advanced microfluidic technologies here. So in that sense, I think we are moving that direction. It takes time, but I think these sort of developments takes time. I mean, we think 30 years is a long time, but maybe not if we look backward. Furthermore, actually, one generation before that development took much longer time. So I think we are not moving that slowly. And also in terms of bridging, I mean, we heard the difficulties or the challenges in bridging between technology and societal needs, and not only doing that in France, but also do it between continents and countries and cultures. I mean, makes it even much more difficult. But what we need to do, and what you have done, is you have created locally here in this team here, you have created conditions for doing that, and opened up a space where that can happen, because it doesn't necessarily happen by itself. And you could look at it at that large scale that you have done, but you could also look at just engineers to healthcare. I mean, it's a huge gap. And I can see that my own students, they every day they look at me and listen to terms that they never heard about when I talk to my colleagues at the medical side. And this is something that I don't know how to teach them, because it's just there. And you get it by being there and learning the language and doing it. So the same way, what we can do is we can create conditions and maybe incitements for actually doing this and integrating engineering labs in the medical labs, or vice versa, and creating something that actually make people go there and do it. And then you don't necessarily have to learn it. You just, just like learning a language, by being in the country, you learn to do this and you understand the questions. Because the next follow-up thing is once you sort of can communicate, you can understand the questions and the needs that, and from my perspective, learning what the medical side, what do they need? I mean, we engineers tend to solve problems that not always are, appreciated. And then we start, I mean, Roland, you had several examples of you develop beautiful technology, and from an engineering perspective, it's just fantastic. And then nobody cares. I mean, and I can only quote George Whitesides. He always says, when you see something new, who cares? And you need to think of that. I mean, who cares about what you've done? And maybe if you know a need or something, at least from an experimentalist sort of point of view, solving problems, solve a real problem. And once you sort of pinpoint what is the problem, you can break it down, and then as an engineer, you can start to sort of work your way through it. And at the end of the day, you have something that actually can do something. And Abe, you touched beautifully on the discussion you had on individualized needs in society at large, and in medicine we see that as the big hype and the big focus all over the world now. Personalized medicine, we sequence your genome, we find your mutations of the tumor or whatever you have, and we track you over time, so we know exactly what we think we know, what should we do at every time instant, and we are learning from that to make it better every day. And I think this is a very sort of a beautiful development that we are seeing coming about. So these were more reflections on some of the topics you put forward here, but I think creating environments where we actually can bridge these misunderstandings or differences in languages and cultures and everything, so more people can actually flatten out the landscape a little bit.
Thank you very much. I think we don't have a solution at this point, and it's and also we need to work on. And here today we have early career researchers, and I think there's one who are going to solve those questions. So, any comments?
Thank you very much for this very amazing discussion. I completely agree with you. And I think it's very important point is the acceptability of the society by the technologies. I think it's, for me, one point of view, we have two technologies. We have no living technologies and living technologies, because we have amazing technology to improve the life of the society, like a smartphone, robotics, and if the people have the idea, okay, the technology can help me to improve my life, it's okay, and the activity is very nice. But because I participate of many social events for the children in the school and the association of patients, and when I discuss with this patient, for example, and we say we accept tomorrow to treat your pathologies with a specific drug developed with no animal testing, for example. And the people will ask me, no, it's I don't say the effect of my body. It's for me, it's very important to have at the beginning to develop the new technologies, and it's agree with all the future call for the grant to add on the consortium the social partner, blah blah blah. It's for me, if the people ask, okay, these technologies can improve my life, okay, and it's the same today for the artificial intelligence, for example. The people are afraid by this technology because my phone tomorrow can drive my life. It's and for me, the acceptability is very important, and for that, the training, the teaching is very important of the young people, because it's to have an evolution, because it's very difficult for the people to accept the technology drives the life tomorrow, if not you help the life of the people.
Thank you. So any questions or comments from RE career researchers? I know that it's a very difficult, task, to solve. Okay. So, well, I think, do we still have time? Or maybe we need
Not
to
so
wrap up?
much, but
Not
do
so
your
much.
best.
Yeah, I know it's a very exciting panel discussion, and we can go on, but I'm afraid we are running out of time. So I wrap up this panel discussion with comments from the panelists. So, Jean-Louis, can you have some message?
Yes, I have an additional comment about acceptability, and in which I think we should increase very much communication and understanding with economists, indeed, is the balance between what is possible and what we can afford. And I think many of these problems of acceptability are connected with that, especially now when we have all these problems of heating and energy and resources, and we are 7 billion on Earth and so on. If you look back now on, for instance, science fiction has dreamed a lot of things, and we have now some things which are beyond what science fiction have been dreaming, but there are also many things that science fiction have been dreaming, which are technology feasible, and we don't have and will never have, just because the energetic cost is too high, like the flying streets, 3D streets with flying cars and things like that. So this interaction between technology and economy, I think, is something which is very important in the discussion. Beyond other problems of acceptability, which can be cultural, which can be related with education and lack of understanding of some elementary aspects of physics by the people, which are things very important. I remember in a talk by Étienne Klein, who is a French both scientist and philosopher, he said, during COVID-19, we had a fantastic opportunity to have people understand what is an exponential. And instead of that, we had some endless experts debates, and in which people learn nothing. So this aspect of trying to get mutual understanding, not only between scientists, but also go as deep as we can in the society and finding the good opportunities to do this is something, yeah, of course it's beyond microfluidics, but microfluidics is part of this in the sense that what we can afford, and this was discussed, is related with also with the complexity, because I think we all dreamed at the beginning that we could do with molecules and health what technology did with the smartphone. But the problem is that biomolecules are so infinitely more complex than electrons and photons that we probably, what we can do in practice for one or few examples and what we can do in society, there is a huge gap, and we have to live with that, and we have to have some collective process of how to do that, except if we do not, we will increase inequalities and transform inequalities in money into even deeper inequalities in access to health, in everything. So this question of what we can afford, I think it's a very important question.
Question, can you deliver some message?
The simple message is, for me, the quality of the discussion we have here is one more proof that we need this kind of collaboration. I feel so comfortable and also forced to find some solutions through the kind of dialogue which is not always comfortable. Because again, maybe we may have a different perspective between France and Japan, between different disciplines. So my message with let's continue to promote this kind of space for discussion involving people who are with a very good will, ready to discuss, but coming from a different perspective. It will not solve all the problems that you identify, but I think it's a precondition to build together maybe a better science and maybe, hopefully, maybe better society. Thank you.
Thank you. And last, Teruo.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for all of these discussion, and which is really, I mean, meaningful, as you said. So I mean, we for a very long time in the scope of microfluidics, we are talking about all these, I mean, personalized medicine, as Thomas pointed out, and then this has a sort of couple of aspects, like so the social acceptance thing is more for the individuals, I mean, with an individual's cultural background, or like that is more for the kind of humanity side of points. But at the same time, it will also be considered as a part of the social system if you implement this into medical services, so that we really need to have some more, I mean, intense, discussion in collaboration with the social scientists and hopefully like humanity or history experts and so on. So that then in this space, as going back to my, the first talk, then we are very much looking at the value of a dialogue in between the people, having the common question together, and then think about how to solve it or how to tackle over to this, big issue. For example, we share in the global scale, but at the same time, we will need to have a look at the individual's behavior in terms of the real implementation of the technology. So like this way. So I hope, as suggested, so we hope to be able to, continue on this kind of forum for the dialogue, and in the frame of Tokyo College. That will be the great impression that I had from today's discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and thank you very much for participating in this panel discussion. We will talk about the future of microfluidics, but it's not only limited to the microfluidics, but the science and technology in general. the society is becoming very complex, and also the individual needs becomes also diversified. And as a researcher, we like to correspond to the needs that a society has, but there is also the limitation. But in order to overcome the limitation, I think the collaboration and interdisciplinary the collaboration is very important, and we need to continue our dialogue. And also, I think it's very important to learn from the history. And today's workshop, we celebrate the 30 years of microfluidics, and over the 30 years, the achievement is incredible. So we can learn from what microfluidics research have done, and also the technology was how it evolved. And then based on that, we can, maybe open up a new era. So once again, thank you very much for participating in panel discussion. And please thank the panelists. Thank you very much.